Has this ever happened to you? You're playing a game, having a grand old time, completing quests, progressing nicely, and generally, you're just being an epic gamer. And then, something happens that you cannot explain and it turns everything you thought you knew about the game you're playing on its head.
Did anyone catch the game last night?
Now, I'm not talking about bugs here. God, and most importantly, gamers know that almost every game these days has a bug or two that makes impossible things happen for seemingly no reason. What I'm talking about is those moments that are intentional and yet you still question what's real whenever you experience them. Now, to clarify, I'm not saying that something can happen in a game and all of a sudden you're looking around your room trying to work out if you're living in a simulation. I'm talking about questioning what's real in the world of the game, since if you're immersed enough, that can be just as impactful. So let's go through a few examples, how they make you question reality, and the different ways it can make you feel whilst playing. But first, we should probably go through why these moments can have such an impact. So when playing a game, there are always ground rules, and while these may not always be explained to you, you normally know them like the back of your hand once you've played enough. In Resident Evil 4, for example, you know that almost anything that moves is out to kill you, headshots do more damage, and Leon is always going to have some lame quip to say whenever he opens his stupid mouth.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
Leon, a man has been killed. Have some respect.
This is the same in almost every game, and after an hour or two of playing, you normally know how these rules work, and this allows you to understand how to play and progress. The moments I'm talking about normally break or at the very least bend these rules, and that's part of the reason why they have such an impact. If I told you that I'm going to show you a series of images of red shapes and one of them was blue, you're going to remember what the blue shape was a lot more than any of the reds because it breaks the rules and stands out. So just the same, if a game tells you you progress by walking around and opening doors, if all of a sudden you're teleported to a completely alien location, it's going to be pretty surprising. Now, to get into examples, I'm obviously going to have to give some minor spoilers for all the games I'm talking about. I'm going to avoid story spoilers as much as possible, but still, if you want to go into any of these games on screen completely blind, then you might not want to watch the rest of this video. Not really the best advice for a brand new channel telling people to stop watching 1 minute into the video, but you gotta do what you gotta do. It's kind of hard to talk about Alan Wake 2 and making you question what's real, because that's kind of the entire point of the game. As Alan writes the story in the dark place, its power makes it become reality, so it's kind of hard to keep track of what's really going on and what's just a part of his story. But there are several things that happen whilst playing that I thought were really cool and added to the tension and mystery of what was happening. By the time you unlock the ability to play as Alan, you've already been playing as Saga for a couple of hours. You've done some combat, moved around the world, and the rulebook that we mentioned earlier has been filled in with how the game works. Once you switch over to Alan in the dark place, that entire rulebook goes out the window and you basically have to learn how to play all over again. Instead of enemies being obviously corrupted people that you can see coming, Alan has to fight literal shadows that can become solid if you get too close. As well as this, there are dozens of red herring shadows that are just that. Shining your torch on them causes them to disappear, leaving you unsure what's a real enemy and what's just a shadow. This is a very light bit of rule breaking, but it does make you feel like you're in Alan's shoes, losing your mind and being unsure of what's real. You either have to waste your batteries shining away any shadow that comes near, or move straight towards potential enemies to conserve resources just in case they're not real. One particular moment early in the game that I thought executed this reality questioning perfectly was whilst reading some emails as Alan. You see one from his old producer saying that he'd heard that people were trying to make a TV show, a movie, and even a video game about everything that happened to Alan Wake. Obviously, this is just a fun little Easter egg, but it got me thinking of, does this game exist inside the universe of the game? Like, does Alan know he's inside of a video game and all these bits of voiceover aren't just him writing the story, but are him directly talking to us so that we can help him escape? When I first saw this, it just added to the mystery and it made my head hurt running through the possibilities of this simple line of text. One of the main themes of the Alan Wake series is that the dark place absorbs works of art and makes them real. Did Alan write the game to exist as a way to get players to help him out of the dark place? Hell, is the game a part of the dark place as a plan to spread its influence? One single line of text broke down the walls of everything that I thought I knew about the game that I was playing, and it made me view everything past that point in a completely different lens. The game already is a mystery thriller, but past this point, I was looking out for anything else that told me the characters knew they were in a game. It took the awe and confusion that I already had playing and turned it up to 11. Another game that uses confusion in a much more literal way is Batman Arkham Asylum. If you've somehow never experienced this masterpiece of a game, you're moving through the aforementioned asylum, taking on various Batman villains and regaining control of the island. As you move through another standard enough looking wing, things start to seem a little bit strange. Tiles start throwing themselves off the walls, and as you head to the morgue, you see the bodies of Batman's parents that died years ago. But the strangest part by far, the game starts using Dutch angles. I mean, this just looks terrible. Later in Arkham Mansion, rain begins to fall from the ceiling, and you're right back in the alley where Bruce's parents were murdered, reliving the worst moments of Batman's entire life. Later still, the game hard crashes, sending you back to the opening cutscene with a few minor changes. Batman is now the one strapped to the chair, and when control switches back, Joker lines you up for the old reverse Abe Lincoln, and... Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was supposed to plug in my N64 controller. Obviously, if you've played the game before, and you should have because it's brilliant, you know these sequences are attacks from Scarecrow and his Fear Toxin. But the first time each of them happens, it makes you question what's really going on. Jim Gordon seemingly dies only to be revealed as a random guard. The crash especially makes you shit your pants, praying that you didn't just corrupt your saves until you realise it's meant to happen. Hell, the actual death screen that's basically the exact same as the real one makes you question what the hell is going on. Is there a middle stick that you could have used to get out of the way? Did you need to plug in the N64 controller? The entire theme of the game, hell, one of the entire themes of Batman in general is to use fear against his enemies. Scarecrow turns the tables and scares Batman first with visions of his dead family, and then the player with visions of dead save files. Now, this isn't a horror that sticks with you when you're trying to fall asleep at night. It's more of a total immediate panic that something is wrong with the game or the console, and honestly, playing this on the jank machine that was the Xbox 360 back when I was 13, I didn't doubt that the game could just crash back to the start. After these events happen, you're moving through the game questioning everything and wondering what else might not be real. These events are totally scripted and only happen at certain points, but still, the rest of the game, you're paying extra close attention to make sure you believe what you're seeing. You're not just playing as the world's greatest detective, you're trying to switch on detective vision in real life to work out what's just a part of the game and what's Scarecrow messing with you. All that being said, when playing as Batman, you'd expect to come up against wacky supernatural enemies and mysteries. One game that I didn't expect to make me question the rules was Trepang 2. From everything I'd heard and seen whilst playing, this seemed like a very fast-paced boomer shooter with a pretty straightforward plot and the occasional supernatural element. And then, all of a sudden, whilst playing through a seemingly normal level in an abandoned military facility, I go to open a door, and all of a sudden, I'm teleported here. If you know anything about recent horror trends, then you know that this area is known as the Backrooms. If you're not familiar, the spark notes are that the Backrooms are essentially areas outside of normal reality that you can accidentally find yourself in if you no-clip in the wrong areas. They're infinitely large, confusing labyrinths made up entirely of abandoned, dated rooms decorated in tired yellow with the constant buzz of fluorescent lighting. Some adaptations say these areas are patrolled by otherworldly beings which seek out those unfortunate enough to find themselves stuck here, but even if you are alone, there's no way out, just an infinite, everlasting purgatory. So you can see how going from this to this would be pretty jarring. This recording is from the first time I found myself here, and my genuine reaction was to stand still, unsure of what I was looking at and what happened. Now, I swear, I'm not one of the paid actors from the Division trailers, this shit was just really cool and blew my mind. As I moved through this area, I was entirely on edge because I had no idea what was happening or what the rules were anymore. Up until this point, I knew that most enemies were normal humans and could just blast them away with guns, no problem, but here, I had no clue. I didn't know if I was alone or if there was some hidden enemy, and honestly, I don't know which one unnerved me more. This area was so quiet and constant that any noise or visual that was out of place made me jump out of my seat in terror. I mean, I literally got scared by a light bulb exploding and a spooky MP3 on the way out. If that doesn't scream tension, I don't know what does. And this one is just like an absurd over the top shooter. Fuck. What the fuck? The first trip into these rooms was so cool and so spooky, and it's only a little bit ruined by the next time it happens. Enemies spawn here for some reason, reminding me that this is a video game, so the only thing I have to worry about in here is regular enemies. That jarring, deafening silence on the first trip when I had no idea what was out there is infinitely more scary than any amount of normal enemies, and I'm a little bit disappointed that this really cool moment is so quickly ruined. Still, the first time it happened, I had no idea what was going on or what the rules of this place were, and that was terrifying. It didn't necessarily further the plot or make me question anything that was happening there, but it did get me thinking about what was going on in this particular area and who exactly I was sent here to fight. As a complete contrast to that, I recently completed Superliminal, and pretty much the entire point of this game is to get you to question what's real or how you can skew reality to suit your needs. The game is meant to be a dreamlike experience where you progress through rooms, using perception to resize objects and keep yourself moving forward. There's a lot of teleporting around, time loops and clever game design here, and it really makes it feel like a dream and sometimes a nightmare. That rulebook I mentioned earlier is constantly being rewritten as you move forward, and the feeling this gives you is a constant whimsical confusion as you try to piece together what you need to do to progress. Most of the game takes place in test-type rooms with warm lighting and clean, pristine decor, but occasionally you'll end up in something that looks like internal corridors of a warehouse. These areas feel a lot more cold and industrial and feature things like blood spatter and whiteboards, letting you know all isn't as it seems. This isn't a horror game by any means. In fact, it's one of the most uplifting and optimistic games I've played in a while, but these moments cut through the surrealism of the rest of the game and ground you somewhere you don't want to be. Why is there blood here when you haven't seen another person or anything living for the whole game? Someone or something else must be out there to bleed and to be the one to cause the bleeding. Who is writing on these whiteboards and why are they leaving you messages telling you to wake up? You're in a dream, but what's going on outside of the dream? Why are you here? What purpose does this all serve? The entire game is meant to confuse you and keep you on your toes, and these sections do that in the opposite way to everything that we've been through so far. Whilst most games set the rules and then break them, Superliminal establishes that there aren't really any rules and then it places them in abruptly. In these areas, there's not really anything to interact with, there's no loops, it's just a corridor, and somehow that nothingness feels a lot more significant than any amount of mind bending. It adds to the mystery of what exactly is going on, where you are, and why this is all happening. I'm not going to spoil how the game ends, but the desire to press ahead and find out what was really going on was always strongest after I'd been through one of these areas rather than any of the reality bending dream areas. Oh, and this is a total aside, but there's a section where you turn off your alarm clock, leave your room only for the alarm noise to come back and teleport you straight back to bed. I don't know about you, I've literally had this exact dream before when I was younger, where my mum would shout me to wake up. I'd then dream of going downstairs and starting to eat breakfast before being woken up for real by even more shouting. That never fails to freak me out, so seeing that in game was pretty trippy. Okay, enough examples. What exactly is the point I'm trying to make? Because I feel like it's gone a little bit lost. Now, initially when I started making this video, I wanted to explore the different ways that this breaking of the rules can make you feel. As I've collected these experiences and talked about them, I've realized that pretty much all of them come down to some sort of fear. Alan Wake gave me the first instance of existential dread in a video game. I didn't know if anything was real in that game or if it was all part of some greater play that the game itself was a part of. Arkham Asylum terrified me at the thought that my Xbox 360 might be falling victim to the over 50% failure rate, and not only would I lose my save for this game, but everything else. And I had my Fable 3 saves in this console, those are important. Trepang 2 took a break from the nearly non-stop chaotic action and placed me in a cold office-based purgatory, and as someone who's worked in an office with yellow walls, this was the scariest one of all, without anything actually scary happening. Even in Superliminal, this dreamlike game quickly felt like a nightmare with liminal space-like hallways covered in blood and insane writing on the walls. Even in the most action-packed games, when I felt like I was playing as a god, that breaking of the game's own rules always put me on edge. And I think that sensation of feeling like a god really helps get closer to the reason why. In most games, you are the most powerful being in that world. You decide where to move, and often how to move there, what to do, how to attack, how to get through conversations, how to progress. When playing a game, you control the character, whether it's Batman or your perfect custom twink in Baldur's Gate 3, you are always in control. However, moments like these remind you that while you may be controlling your character, everything else is totally out of your control. You only think that you're in control because the game makes you feel that way, and at any point, the game can take that away, and that's always going to make you feel helpless and probably a little bit scared. These moments aren't the game breaking its own rules at all. It's the game showing you that the only person who has to play by those rules is you. So yeah, I lied at the start of the video, but if you look really closely, right, zoom in, enhance, a little bit more, zoom in a little bit more, enhance one more time, right there. Yeah, I had my fingers crossed, so you really should have seen this coming. Games have rules, yeah, but they only apply to the player and any other NPC, enemies, or environments that the player interacts with. The game itself has no rules, and whenever they dangle that in front of you, it's normally at least somewhat scary, but always pretty damn memorable. Thank you very much for watching the video. If you made it this far, I really can't tell you how much it means to me. As you can tell, this is a pretty new channel, so if you did like the video, then a like and subscribe would really be super appreciated, as it really does help out a lot. As for upload schedule, I don't really have a set plan in mind right now. I'm just kind of making these videos as and when I have time to do them, and I have an idea to do them. That said, I do have quite a few ideas written out, with one of them partially written, so probably another video in the next month or so. I'm doing my best here, so, you know. If you don't see anything for a month, I apologize. Anyway, whenever the next video does drop, I hope I'll see you here again. So for now, thank you very much one last time for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.